Hello, especially for the Dirty Secrets channel.
Michael Sullivan stared at his phone, the text message blurring as he read it for the 5th time. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Room 412. Same time. It wasn't meant for him. Sara had obviously thought she was texting someone else, the someone she met in hotel rooms while Michael worked late at the firm. He set the phone down on the kitchen counter and took a deep breath. 12 years of marriage. 2 children. A house in the suburbs with the white picket fence Sara had always wanted. All of it suddenly felt like an elaborate stage set, ready to collapse at the slightest touch. The front door opened, and he heard the familiar sound of Sara's keys landing in the ceramic bowl by the entrance. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she approached. "Hey, you're home early," she said, surprise evident in her voice. She set her bag down and leaned in to kiss his cheek, the scent of an unfamiliar cologne clinging faintly to her blouse. Meeting got cancelled. Michael's voice sounded strange even to his own ears. Your phone was buzzing. Thought it might be important. Sara's eyes darted to her phone on the counter, then back to his face. Something shifted in her expression, so subtle someone else might have missed it. But Michael had spent 12 years memorizing every nuance of her face. Thanks. She picked up the phone, glancing at the screen. He watched her delete the message without comment. Kids asleep? Yeah. Emma had a math test. I helped her study before bedtime. Sara nodded, moving to the refrigerator. Have you eaten? I can heat up something. And just like that, they slipped into their normal routine, as if the message didn't exist, as if Michael hadn't seen it, as if their marriage wasn't crumbling beneath them like sand. That night, lying beside his wife in bed, Michael stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly they had become strangers living in the same house. Had it been gradual? Or had there been a specific moment when everything changed, a crossroads he'd failed to recognize? Tomorrow, Sara would go to room 412. And Michael still hadn't decided what he was going to do about it. The law office buzzed with activity, but Michael barely noticed as he stared out his corner office window. 15 floors below, people moved like ants along the sidewalk, each with their own complicated lives and secrets. Did you hear anything I just said? David Mercer, his partner at the firm, was looking at him expectantly. Sorry. Distracted. Michael turned away from the window. The Jensen brief. It needs to be on Judge Harmon's desk by 5. David studied him with concern. You okay? You've been off all morning. Michael considered telling him. David had been his best friend since law school, had been his best man at the wedding. But saying it out loud would make it real in a way he wasn't prepared to face. Just tired. Emma's science project kept us up late. David seemed to accept this. Coffee's fresh in the break room. Get some before the paralegals drain it. When David left, Michael pulled out his phone and checked the time. 2:17 p.m. Sara would be at the hotel by now. Room 412. With him, whoever he was. Michael had followed her once before, 3 weeks ago, when the late meetings and changed plans first became suspicious. He'd watched her enter the Grand Plaza Hotel, observed how the doorman greeted her with familiarity. But he hadn't gone inside. Some final thread of trust, or perhaps fear, had held him back. His secretary's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Wells from Apex Corp is on line 2. Michael took a deep breath and reached for the phone. Ron, thanks for calling back. He spoke automatically, discussing contractual terms while his mind remained fixed on a hotel room across town. When the call ended, he found himself standing, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. Cancel my afternoon, he told his startled secretary as he strode past her desk. Family emergency. The elevator seemed to take forever. In the parking garage, he sat in his car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. He still hadn't decided what he would do when he got there, what he would say. He only knew he couldn't sit in his office pretending everything was normal for one more second. The Grand Plaza was a 20-minute drive. Michael made it in 15. The hotel lobby gleamed with polished marble and crystal chandeliers. The pianist played softly in the corner as Michael approached the front desk, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm meeting my wife," he told the young woman behind the counter. "She's expecting me. Room 412. The receptionist smiled. "Your name, sir?" "Michael Sullivan." She tapped at her computer. "I don't see a guest registered under Sullivan." "Course not." "She may have registered under her maiden name." "Campbell. Sara Campbell." Another tap. Another smile. "No Campbell either." "Perhaps another name." Michael's mouth went dry. "Can you just call the room? Tell whoever answers that Michael is here." The receptionist hesitated. "Sir, I can't call a room without knowing the guest's name." He was about to argue when a voice behind him said, "Michael?" He turned to find Elizabeth Chen, a colleague from another law firm, looking at him with surprise. They had worked together on several cases over the years. "Elizabeth." "Hi." He attempted a casual smile. "What brings you to the Grand Plaza?" "Meeting a client." Her eyes were curious. "Something like that." Michael glanced back at the receptionist, who was now helping another guest. "You stay here often?" "When I'm in town. They have the best room service in the city." She tilted her head. "Everything okay? You seem tense." "Fine. Just running late." He checked his watch to emphasize the point. "Don't let me keep you then." Elizabeth smiled. "We should catch up sometime. Proper dinner, not just passing in hotel lobbies." Michael nodded and watched her walk toward the elevators. An idea formed. He waited until she stepped inside, then hurried to catch the same elevator just before the doors closed. "Sorry," he said, slightly breathless. "Which floor?" "Fourth," Elizabeth replied, then returned to her phone call. "Fourth floor. Where room 412 would be." When the elevator doors opened, Michael followed Elizabeth down the hallway, maintaining what he hoped was a natural distance. She turned left at a junction while he continued straight, scanning the room numbers. Row 410. 412, he stood before the door, pulse racing. From inside, he could hear muffled voices. One of them was definitely Sara's laugh, that specific cadence he'd know anywhere. Michael raised his hand to knock, then lowered it again. What exactly was his plan here? Storm in and catch them in the act? Then what? He hadn't thought this through. As he stood frozen with indecision, the door suddenly swung open. Sara stood there, wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, her hair slightly disheveled. Their eyes met. The shock on her face quickly transformed into something else, not guilt as he'd expected, but anger. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, stepping into the hallway and pulling the door partially closed behind her. Before Michael could answer, a male voice called from inside the room. "Sara? Who is it?" And in that moment, as the door opened wider, Michael's carefully constructed world completely fell apart. The man standing behind Sara wasn't a stranger. It was David Mercer, his law partner, his best friend. For a moment, no one spoke. The hallway seemed to compress around them, the air suddenly thick and difficult to breathe. "Michael!" David's voice broke the silence, his face draining of color. He too wore a hotel bathrobe, the Grand Plaza logo embroidered on the breast pocket. "This isn't, don't." Michael cut him off, unable to bear whatever lie was coming next. "Just don't." Sara stood rigidly between them, her hands clenched at her sides. "You followed me." It wasn't a question, but Michael answered anyway. "Yes." "You had no right." The absurdity of her statement might have made him laugh if he weren't so devastated. "No right? You're my wife." "Let's not do this in the hallway," David said, glancing nervously at the neighboring doors. "We're not doing this at all." Michael stepped back. I've seen enough. Sara reached for his arm. Michael, wait. We need to talk about this. How long? Question burned in his throat. How long has this been going on? Their exchanged glance was answer enough. 8 months, David finally said. 8 months. While they had family dinners together. While David stood in Michael's backyard grilling steaks and playing with Michael's children. While they sat across from each other in partnership meetings discussing the future of their firm. I trusted you, Michael said, the words directed at both of them. Both of you. It wasn't planned, Sara began. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Michael interrupted, his voice rising despite his effort to control it. You make choices. Both of you made choices. Every day for 8 months. A door opened further down the hallway, an elderly couple peering out curiously at the commotion. David stepped fully into the hallway, closing the hotel room door behind him. Michael, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. Michael backed away. You know what? Have each other. You deserve each other. He turned and walked toward the elevator, ignoring Sara calling his name. Inside the elevator, he pressed the lobby button and leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. When the doors closed, he allowed himself a moment to break, a single sob escaping before he forced himself back into control. In the lobby, he walked blindly past the reception desk and into the afternoon sunlight. He sat in his car for nearly an hour, unable to drive, his mind replaying every interaction with David and Sara over the past 8 months, searching for signs he should have seen. There had been many, he realized now. The inside jokes he hadn't been part of. The way David always asked about Sara a little too casually. The business trips that happened to overlap. His phone rang, Sara. He silenced it. Then David. Silenced again. Then his secretary, probably wondering where he was. He answered that one. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Mercer's been trying to reach you. He says it's urgent. Tell Mr. Mercer I'm unavailable, Michael replied, his voice steady despite everything. In fact, I'll be unavailable to him for the foreseeable future. 3 days after the hotel confrontation, Michael sat in a different hotel room, this one at the airport and 15 miles from his house. He hadn't been home since. Hadn't seen Sara or his children. Hadn't been to the office. His phone showed 27 missed calls, most from Sara and David, a few from other partners at the firm. He'd answered only the calls from his children, brief conversations where he told them he was away on business and would see them soon. A knock at the door startled him. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw his sister, Catherine. How did you find me? He asked as he opened the door. You used your credit card, genius. She brushed past him, scrutinizing the room with disapproval. Nice place. Very man on the edge. Michael closed the door. Did Sara call you? She did. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. And then David called. And then your secretary called because apparently you've gone AWOL from work. She fixed him with a pointed stare. Want to tell me what's going on? So he told her everything, the words spilling out in a rush. Catherine listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly concerned. When he finished, she let out a long breath. Oh, Michael. Yeah. He leaned against the wall. So now you know. What are you going to do? I don't know. It was the truth. 3 days of isolation hadn't brought any clarity. I can't go back to the firm. I can't even look at David. And Sara? Michael shook his head. Our marriage is over. There's no coming back from this. Have you actually told her that? Had a conversation? What's to discuss? She's been sleeping with my best friend for almost a year. Catherine crossed her arms. I'm not defending what she did. It's unforgivable. But you have 2 children together. You can't hide in an airport hotel forever. She was right, of course. But the thought of facing Sara, of discussing divorce and custody arrangements, made his chest constrict with anxiety. "I need more time." "Take the time you need," Catherine said, her voice softening. "But don't make decisions while you're in this state. And for God's sake, call your other partners before they file a missing persons report." After she left, Michael forced himself to call the firm. He spoke to Gerald Hampton, the senior partner, explaining that he needed personal leave for a family emergency. Gerald was understanding but concerned. "David mentioned there might be some tension between you two. Anything the firm needs to address?" "Not at this time," Michael replied carefully. "I just need a few weeks to sort some things out. Take what you need. Your cases will be distributed temporarily." Next, he called his children. Emma, 13 and perceptive, immediately asked if something was wrong. "Just some grown-up stuff to figure out," he told her. "I'll be home in a few days, I promise." Finally, after another sleepless night, he texted Sara, "We need to talk. Not ready to come home yet. Meet me tomorrow at Riverside Park, 2 p.m. by the boat rental." Her response came immediately, "I'll be there." Park was neutral territory, public enough to prevent a scene, but with enough private corners for a difficult conversation. As Michael drove there the next day, he still didn't know exactly what he was going to say, only that it was time to stop hiding and face what came next. Riverside Park was busy with weekend visitors, families picnicking, joggers on the paths, couples in paddle boats on the small lake. Michael arrived early and found a bench with a view of the water, partially secluded by oak trees. He spotted Sara before she saw him. She was wearing the blue dress he had always liked, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes visible even from a distance. When she noticed him, she hesitated briefly before walking over. She didn't try to kiss him or even touch him as she sat beside him on the bench, maintaining a careful distance. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. Michael nodded, keeping his eyes on the lake. "How are the kids?" "Confused. They miss you." She paused. "I told them you needed some time away for work, like you asked." "Thank you." The politeness between them felt surreal after over a decade of intimacy. "Michael, about what happened, I don't want details," he interrupted. "I don't need to know how it started or why. It won't change anything." Sara was quiet for a moment. "What do you want, then?" "A divorce." The word hung between them, heavy and final. "I've already contacted Laura Simmons." The name of their family lawyer. Sara nodded slowly. "I assumed as much." She looked down at her hands. "What about the children?" "I want joint custody. I'm not leaving their lives, even if I'm leaving you." "Of course." Her voice trembled slightly. "I would never keep them from you." They sat in silence, watching a father help his young daughter into a paddle boat. The normalcy of the scene felt like a reproach. "I've taken a leave of absence from the firm," Michael said. "I'm looking at other options." "Because of David?" "Yes." Sara turned to face him directly. "I know you don't want explanations, and you deserve your anger. But there's something I need to say." Michael finally looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the hotel. The woman he had loved for so long, now a stranger in familiar skin. "Go ahead." "I'm sorry." Her eyes filled with tears. "Not just for the affair, but for how you found out. For the betrayal by both of us. You deserved better." Michael had imagined this moment, had rehearsed cutting responses and righteous accusations. But faced with her genuine remorse, he found those prepared speeches inadequate. "Why David?" Question escaped before he could stop it, breaking his own rule about details. Sara wiped at her eyes. "It wasn't about you. It wasn't because you lacked something or because he had something you didn't. It was about me, my failures, my weaknesses." "That's not an answer." "I know." She looked away. The truth is, I don't have a good answer. I was unhappy, and instead of talking to you about it, I made the worst possible choice. There's no justification that will make sense or make it hurt less. A child's laughter floated across the water, the sound jarringly cheerful against their somber conversation. Where will you live? Sara asked after another silence. I've rented an apartment in Westview. It's close enough that I can still take the kids to school, be there for their activities. When will you tell them? About us? Soon. They deserve honesty, even if it's difficult. Michael stood, suddenly needing to move. I'll come by tomorrow to get some more of my things. And to see Emma and Jake. Sara nodded, remaining seated. David's been trying to reach you. I have nothing to say to him. He's leaving the firm, moving to Chicago. His sister lives there. The information landed oddly, not satisfaction exactly, but a grim acknowledgement. Their affair had destroyed more than just a marriage. That's probably for the best, Michael said. As he walked away, Sara called after him. For what it's worth, Michael, loving you was never the problem. That you were always more than enough. He paused but didn't turn around. Then we both have to live with what you threw away. Walking back to his car, Michael felt a strange, unexpected lightness. The conversation had been painful, but it was a beginning, the first step toward whatever came next. The future stretched before him, unwritten and uncertain, but at least it was his to shape now, free from deception. Telling the children was even harder than Michael had anticipated. They sat in the living room of what had been their family home, Michael, Sara, 13-year-old Emma, and 9-year-old Jake, the atmosphere tense with unspoken words. Are you guys getting a divorce? Emma asked directly before either parent could begin their carefully rehearsed explanation. Michael and Sara exchanged glances. Yes, sweetheart, Sara finally answered. Dad and I have decided that's what's best. Because you don't love each other anymore? Jake's voice was small, his eyes wide with confusion. It's more complicated than that, Michael said, struggling to find words that wouldn't burden them with adult complexities but wouldn't lie either. Sometimes relationships between grown-ups change, but our love for both of you never will. Is it because Mom has a boyfriend? Emma asked, her direct gaze challenging. Question landed like a physical blow. Michael looked at Sara, who had gone pale. What makes you say that? Sara asked, her voice carefully controlled. Emma shrugged. I heard you on the phone talking to someone named David, and you were laughing in a way you don't laugh with Dad anymore. Children, Michael thought, missed so little. While he had been oblivious for months, his daughter had been quietly observing, piecing together the fragments of their fracturing family. Emma, Michael began, but Sara interrupted. Yes. Her voice was steady now. I made a mistake that hurt your father very much. That's part of why we're getting divorced. Jake looked confused. What kind of mistake? A grown-up mistake, Sara said. One I take responsibility for. Michael was surprised by her honesty. He had expected them to present a united front of mutual decision and amicable separation, the sanitized version of divorce parents often offered children. Dad's going to live in an apartment nearby, Sara continued. You'll spend time at both places. We're still working out the details, but nothing changes about how much we both love you. I don't want to go back and forth, Jake said, tears welling in his eyes. I want everything to stay the same. Michael moved to sit beside his son, pulling him into a gentle hug. I know, buddy. I wish things could stay the same too. But sometimes change happens even when we don't want it to. The important thing is that Mom and I will always be your parents, no matter where we live. Can I stay with Dad? Emma asked, her chin raised in defiance. I don't want to live with a cheater. Emma! Michael's tone was sharper than intended. That's enough. Sara flinched but didn't defend herself. You'll spend time with both of us. We're not going to let you choose sides. But she's right, Jake said, pulling away from Michael. Mom cheated. That's why you're really leaving. Why can't she leave instead? The conversation deteriorated from there, despite their efforts to redirect it. By the end, Jake was crying openly. Emma had stormed upstairs to her room, and both Michael and Sara were emotionally exhausted. That went well, Michael said grimly after the children had gone. What did you expect? Sara replied. Their world is falling apart. You didn't have to admit to the affair. He wasn't sure if he was criticizing or thanking her. Emma already knew or suspected. Better they hear some truth from us than piece it together from overheard conversations or neighbors' gossip. Sara looked suddenly older, the weight of her decisions evident in her posture. I won't let them think this was mutual when it wasn't. That wouldn't be fair to you or to them. Michael nodded, surprised by her willingness to shoulder the blame. Didn't erase what she'd done, but it was something, a small act of integrity in the midst of so much damage. I should go talk to Emma, he said. Let me try first, Sara suggested. She needs to understand that she can be angry with me without rejecting me completely. That's not a healthy pattern to establish. As Sara climbed the stairs to their daughter's room, Michael sat alone in the living room, surrounded by family photos that now seemed like artifacts from another life. In every frame, smiling faces belied the fractures forming beneath the surface. When had they last been truly happy, he wondered. Had their marriage been failing long before the affair, or had Sara's betrayal been the catalyst rather than the symptom? Eventually, Sara came back downstairs, her eyes red from crying. She's calmer now. Says she wants to talk to you. Michael found Emma lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd redecorated her room recently, replacing childish decorations with posters of bands and actresses, asserting her emerging adolescence. Hey, he said, sitting at the edge of her bed. Hey. She didn't look at him. I know this is all really hard. Emma sat up suddenly. Are you and Mom going to hate each other now? Like Melissa's parents? They can't even be in the same room without fighting. No, Michael said firmly. We're not going to be like that. We're still going to be your parents together, even if we're not married anymore. But she hurt you. With that David guy. Aren't you mad? Michael chose his words carefully. I'm hurt and disappointed. But hate takes too much energy, Emma. And it doesn't solve anything. So you forgive her? Emma sounded incredulous. Forgiveness is complicated. It's something that takes time. He paused. But I'm trying to remember that people can make terrible mistakes and still be good people in other ways. Your mom is still the same person who loves you more than anything. Emma considered this. Are you sad? Yes, he admitted. Very sad. But I'll be okay. We'll all be okay eventually. His daughter surprised him then, wrapping her arms around him in a fierce hug. I'm sorry Mom hurt you, Dad. Michael held her close, his throat tight with emotion. Thank you, sweetheart. But remember something important. What happened between Mom and me is between adults. You don't have to take sides or carry our pain. Your job is just to be 13, okay? As he left Emma's room, Michael passed Jake's door and heard Sara's voice inside, gentle and reassuring. Despite everything, she was a good mother. That, at least, hadn't changed. Downstairs, he gathered the few items he'd come for. As he was leaving, Sara appeared in the hallway. Will you be at Emma's piano recital on Thursday? She asked. Of course. We should arrive separately. Sit separately too, probably. Michael nodded, the reality of their new normal settling over him like a heavy cloak. I'll be there at 7. As he drove to his new apartment, the emptiness of it waiting like an accusation, Michael realized that divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a complex choreography of separate lives still permanently linked through their children. A dance they would perform for years to come, regardless of the pain that had initiated it. The law offices of Sullivan, Mercer, and Hampton had been Michael's professional home for 9 years. Now, walking through the reception area after a month's absence, he felt like a visitor in a once familiar place. Gerald Hampton met him at the conference room door, extending a hand. "Michael, good to have you back." Inside, the other partners waited around the polished mahogany table, all except David, who had made good on his intention to relocate to Chicago. His absence was palpable, his nameplate already removed from the door. "Before we begin," Gerald said once they were seated, "I want to acknowledge that recent events have created some challenges for the firm. David's departure was unexpected, and your leave of absence, while completely understandable under the circumstances, has left us navigating some difficult waters with clients." The other partners nodded. Everyone knew about the affair by now. The legal community was too small for such dramatic personal entanglements to remain private. "I appreciate your understanding," Michael said. "And I apologize for any disruption." "No apology necessary," Gerald assured him. "However, we do need to discuss how to move forward." The discussion that followed was professional but pointed. Several of Michael and David's shared clients had gone with David to his new firm in Chicago. Others were uncertain about staying with Sullivan, Mercer, and Hampton at all, concerned about stability and consistency. "The Jensen account is particularly concerning," Sandra Reeves, the newest partner, explained. "They've put their contract renewal on hold. They're considering other options." The Jensen account was one of their largest, worth millions in annual billing. Losing it would be a significant blow. "I'll speak with Ronald Jensen personally," Michael offered. "We've played golf together for years. I might be able to smooth things over." Gerald nodded approvingly. "Good. Now about the name. With David gone, we should consider rebranding." "To what?" Michael asked. "Sullivan and Hampton has a nice ring to it," Gerald suggested. "Unless you have objections to keeping your name at the forefront after everything." The implication was clear. Some might find it awkward that the firm continued to prominently feature the name of the man whose wife had an affair with a departed partner. This drama made clients nervous. "My personal life shouldn't affect the firm's branding," Michael said firmly. "Sullivan and Hampton is fine if that's what we decide." The meeting continued, covering case assignments and staffing adjustments in David's absence. By the end, Michael felt emotionally drained but professionally resolved. This firm was as much his legacy as his marriage had been, and he wasn't going to lose both. As the others filed out, Gerald held Michael back. "A word in private?" Once they were alone, Gerald's formal demeanor softened. "How are you really doing, Michael? And don't give me the stoic lawyer answer." Michael sighed. "Taking it day by day. Kids are struggling with the transition. Emma especially. And Sara, we're civil, working out the divorce details through mediators rather than fighting it out in court. Neither of us wants to make this uglier than it already is." Gerald nodded approvingly. "Smart. I've seen too many colleagues destroy themselves and their children with vindictive divorces." He paused. "And what about David? Any communication?" "No." Michael's tone made it clear the subject was closed. "Fair enough." Gerald gathered his papers. "Just remember, the firm needs you at your best." "If you need more time, I don't," Michael interrupted. "Work is the one thing that makes sense right now. I need to be here." Later that afternoon, Michael called Ronald Jensen as promised. Conversation was initially awkward, with Jensen obviously uncomfortable addressing the elephant in the room. "I heard about the situation with David Mercer," Jensen finally said. "Unfortunate business." "Very," Michael agreed, keeping his tone neutral. "But I want to assure you that the firm's transition has been smooth. Your cases remain my highest priority, and we've brought in Adams from litigation to assist, given his background in corporate regulatory matters." "Yes, Adam is good." Jensen paused. Look, Michael, I've known you a long time. Known your father before you. It's not the firm's stability I'm concerned about. It's yours. The statement caught Michael off guard. I'm fine, Ron. Are you? Most men I know would be a wreck. Hell, when my first wife left me for my business partner back in '98, I nearly drove my company into the ground. Couldn't focus. Made bad decisions. Michael hadn't known this about Jensen. I appreciate the concern, but I'm handling it. Good. Because I like working with you, but I need to know my legal counsel isn't distracted by personal vendettas or emotional trauma. I can assure you. Don't assure me, Jensen interrupted. Prove it. The Westlake acquisition has significant challenges. Navigate us through that successfully, and you'll have demonstrated exactly what I need to see. After hanging up, Michael sat in his office, staring at the photographs he'd removed from his desk when he returned, family pictures now stored in a drawer because he couldn't bear to look at Sarah's face while working. The empty spaces they left behind seemed symbolic of his new reality. His secretary buzzed. Mr. Sullivan? Ms. Reeves would like to know if you have time to review the Westlake preliminary findings this afternoon. Tell her I'll come to her office in 20 minutes, he replied, already reaching for the Westlake file. Immersing himself in work was the lifeline he needed, a reminder that while one part of his identity had crumbled, other parts remained solid and within his control. The law, at least, had clear rules and predictable consequences, unlike the chaotic terrain of human relationships. By the time he left the office that evening, Michael had outlined a comprehensive strategy for the Westlake acquisition, scheduled meetings with 3 wavering clients, and drafted a proposal for the firm's rebranding. It was the most productive day he'd had in months. In the parking garage, he encountered Elizabeth Chen, the same colleague he'd met at the hotel the day he discovered the affair. She offered a sympathetic smile. I heard you were back. How are you holding up? Better than expected, he said, surprised to find it was actually true. Good. She hesitated. Listen, if you ever want to talk, not about work, just as friends, I'm a pretty good listener. The offer was kind, without ulterior motive. Michael realized he'd been so focused on what he'd lost that he'd overlooked the connections that remained, colleagues, acquaintances, potential friends who could become part of whatever came next. I might take you up on that, he said. Thank you. Driving home to his sparse apartment, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced since the day in the hotel hallway, a glimmer of possibility, a sense that his story wasn't ending but merely taking an unexpected turn. The road ahead was unclear, but for the first time, he felt capable of navigating it. 6 months after the separation, Michael stood in line at Cooper's Coffee House, scanning emails on his phone while waiting to order. The Saturday morning crowd was typical: parents with children in soccer uniforms, students with laptops, retirees lingering over newspapers. Michael? He looked up to find David Mercer standing before him, as stunned by the encounter as Michael was. David looked different, thinner, with a beard he hadn't worn before, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than his customary suits. David. Michael's voice was flat. I heard you moved to Chicago. I did. I'm back visiting my mother. She's having surgery next week. David shifted uncomfortably. How are you? The absurdity of the question, how was he doing after his best friend slept with his wife, might have been laughable if it weren't so painful. I'm fine, Michael said curtly. The firm is doing well. Sullivan and Hampton now officially. David nodded. I heard. Congratulations. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with the coffee shop's ambient noise, espresso machines hissing, conversations flowing around them, oblivious to the tension. I should go, Michael finally said, stepping aside to let David order. Wait. David's voice stopped him. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes. Every instinct told Michael to refuse, to walk away and preserve the distance he'd established. But curiosity, or perhaps some need for closure, made him nod reluctantly.
Hello, especially for the Dirty Secrets channel.